Good morning, everyone. We'll get started in just a moment. Morning, everybody. Thank you for joining us. We're going to get started in just a minute. All right. Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining. We can go ahead and get started. So my name is Nikita Sinha. I'm a program manager with the Institute for Local Government. And wanted to thank you all so much for joining our webinar this morning, Powering the Future Cost-Saving Energy Efficiency Projects for Local Governments. And we have really great speakers who'll be able to talk about energy efficiency and energy beyond just efficiency, and how it relates to the climate change and sustainability work that local governments are taking on. So really glad that you're able to join us. And I'm going to just move on. So I'll be our moderator for today. I am a program manager with the Institute for Local Government. I work on our sustainability programming, including our Beacon program, which I'll talk a little bit about in just a moment. And I'm joined by our wonderful speakers who I'll introduce before we jump into their presentations. So just kind of an overview of today. We'll do some welcome, some introductions, and then we'll have presentations from our speakers, Daniel Johnson from the California Energy Commission, Justine Chow from SoCal Edison, Rhonda Seleka from Clear Result, and Brendan Havner-Doughton from Contra Costa County. Once we hear from our speakers, we'll have a chance to get into the question and answer discussion section. Thank you all for sending in questions as you registered. Those were really great, and we're really excited to talk through some of those with our speakers. And then we'll wrap up and send everybody off on their way and enjoy the rest of our day reflecting on what we've learned today in the energy world together. So we are using Zoom webinar for this webinar. You'll notice that as you entered, you are on mute automatically. Our webinar today is being recorded. You do have several options for participating. So the first is that you have a chat box function. Feel free to just say hi. I saw a good morning in there. If you want to introduce yourself at all, that's the place to do it. And then we also have a question and answer box, which you'll see in the bottom of your Zoom panel. And you'll be able to ask questions there. When we get to the Q&A section, we'll be going through those and answering hopefully as many as we're going to be able to get to. I see one question in there already. Yes, we're going to be sending out the slides as well as a recording after the webinar. So if you're not familiar a little bit about ILG, we are the nonprofit training affiliate of the League of California Cities, California State Association of Counties, and the California Special Districts Association. So we are very proud to work with over 2,500 local agencies across the state as an education and training resource organization. We do this in a number of different ways and in a number of different program areas. Our leadership and governance program, civics education and workforce, public engagement, and sustainable and resilient communities, which is largely where we'll be today. And we offer a number of different services, including education and training, such as today's webinar, technical assistance, where we get more in depth on specific issues, capacity building and support for local government agencies, and convenings and bringing folks together. And in our sustainable and resilient communities, wanted to just mention our Beacon program. So our Beacon program is a peer learning and awards recognition program for local governments that are taking on sustainability actions and going above and beyond, really, in working to make their communities more sustainable, more resilient, and improving the quality of life for your communities. So the Beacon program has over 170 agencies that are member agencies. And I'll talk a little bit in a moment about how to join. And one of the things that we love to do with our Beacon agencies is to celebrate the work that they are already doing and make sure that they're being recognized for that good work. So our Beacon Awards program celebrates local leaders, connects local governments with each other to share best practices and do peer learning to advance them and move the work forward. And as I mentioned, so today's presenters, we'll get kicked off in just a minute. Daniel Johnson is an associate energy specialist from the California Energy Commission. Justine Catherine Chow is a senior project manager with SoCal Edison. Rhonda Zaleka is a customer relationship manager with Clear Results. And Brendan Havner-Doughton is an energy manager with Contra Costa County, really to help share how some of these projects can be applied by local governments themselves. And before we get into that, we wanted to start off with a quick poll just to get a sense of who's in the room with us today. So I'm going to launch that poll. You should see it come up in just a second. 3 quick questions. And once we get a number of responses, we'll share the answers on the screen. So if you can tell us what kind of organization you represent, whether that's a local government, state government, nonprofit, or something else. How much of your work involves energy efficiency day to day and other energy projects, just to get a sense of how familiar folks are with the topic. And then what are some of the drivers behind your energy work and sustainability work broadly, whether that might be the cost saving, the real leadership from your org's leadership, and then any other reasons as well. Okay. Give it another few seconds. Great. So it looks like about 80% of the folks on the line have answered. So I'm going to share the results. In terms of what type of organization, looks like there's a fair number of cities, a few counties on the line, a few special districts, and then some folks from the state or nonprofit organizations, as well as the other. If you answered other, please feel free to drop it in the chat. We'd love to know where you're joining us from. For how much of your work involves energy efficiency, 23% said all of your work. So got some real energy focused people in the room, as well as 63% said some, and 15% said none. So we're hoping that today we'll be able to be a good introduction to folks who are in that none category or even that some category of what some of the work entails and what some of the opportunities are and resources are that are available to you as you get started maybe in this area. And then what drives your organization's projects and priorities for energy? It looks like there's a pretty good mix. So 29% said cost savings, which is something we'll touch on today. 37% said carbon emissions reduction. So as agencies are taking on emissions reductions and really working to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, energy projects and building electrification is a really huge component of that. 6% said organization leadership, and then 13% said increased resiliency and system reliability, and then 15% said other. So if you said other, please go ahead and drop that in the chat as well. And I do see the note in the chat that maybe the hosts of the panels might be the only. You may have the option to select to send a chat to everybody. So just that reminder for the chat. I'm going to hit stop sharing. So thank you all so much for participating in the poll and for letting us know kind of where you're at in the conversation. That'll help us as we get started with the presenters. So on that note, I'm going to pass it to Daniel, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and Daniel's going to share for a presentation from the California Energy Commission.
Hi there. Okay, got it all working here. Let me start my presentation. Okay. Let me minimize. All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Daniel Johnson. I work in the Building Performance and Metrics Unit at the California Energy Commission. Today, I will be discussing the mandatory building benchmarking program and the benefits of knowing more about your building's energy performance. To set the stage for why California has implemented the Building Energy Benchmarking Program, I thought it would be appropriate to discuss one of California's largest identified goals, and that is to combat the existential threat of climate change. Through executive order and legislation, California has focused on ways to decrease greenhouse gas emissions from existing buildings. In 2015, Assembly Bill 802 was signed into law. One of the key aspects of AB 802 was to develop a building energy benchmarking program. Conducting an energy benchmark helps measure the performance of your building and lets you know how efficient or inefficient it may be. A significant portion of a company's operating expenses goes toward energy bills. Energy efficiency improvements may reduce these costs substantially. When you use less energy, utilities need to generate less, thereby reducing grid load and associated GHG emissions. The CEC administers the Building Energy Benchmarking and Public Disclosure Program, the purpose of which is to make information regarding building energy performance freely available so people can better understand the buildings in which they live and work, as well as use this information to reduce energy consumption and reduce GHG emissions. Multifamily and commercial buildings 50,000 square feet and larger are required to report to the CEC annually. Benchmarking is tracking energy performance against the standard. Under the Building Energy Benchmarking Program, you calculate your energy use intensity by dividing your energy use by the square footage of your building. That number will act as a baseline to compare the efficiency of your building to that of previous years or to those of similar buildings. Energy use intensity, or EUI, is expressed as energy per square foot per year. It's calculated by dividing the total energy consumed by the building in 1 year by the total gross floor area of the building. Weather normalized EUI is the energy your building would have used under average conditions. The weather in a given year may be much hotter or colder than your building's normal climate. Weather normalized energy accounts for this difference. You can use EUI information to analyze baseline, investigate causes, identify projects, implement energy efficiency and building electrification projects to lower energy use and reduce GHG emissions. With the 1 to 100 Energy Star score you see on this dashboard, you can understand how your building's energy consumption measures up against similar buildings nationwide. The Energy Star score allows anyone to quickly understand how your building is performing. A score of 50 represents median energy performance, while a score of 75 or higher indicates your building is a top performer and may be eligible for Energy Star certification. When implementing energy efficiency and building electrification projects, both need to happen simultaneously. Energy efficiency is paramount to realizing savings from electrification and lends greatly to lowering overall energy use and the reduction of GHG emissions. State law establishes a process that allows local adoption of building energy benchmarking programs. These programs can be more stringent than statewide standards, including lower building area thresholds. Local governments can adopt and enforce building energy benchmarking before the statewide effective date, require additional energy conservation measures like audits, and/or set more stringent square footage thresholds. These 7 city ordinances have been approved by the CEC and share their data annually to the CEC, which results in compliance for their building owners. The statewide program square footage threshold is still 50,000 square feet and larger. We would love to engage with other local jurisdictions, including cities and counties, to share more information about how local jurisdictions can develop their own benchmarking and building performance standards programs. Some of the state's largest utilities support easy-to-use portals to automatically connect to your building's data. In addition to utility resources, the US EPA and the Energy Commission have published their own helpful fact sheets, documentation, and videos to assist the public with benchmarking. The Energy Commission has a dedicated program team that utilizes a call center and help desk to support building owners and facility managers through phone and email. Here's my contact information, as well as the benchmarking program email and hotline number. Again, thank you for your time today, and please reach out if you have any questions, which will be later on. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. So if there are questions for Daniel about the benchmarking programs, the local ordinances, or anything else that he talked about, please feel free to drop that in the Q&A. And as we get to the discussion section of today's agenda, we will be able to share those and have Daniel give us some more information. Now I'm going to go ahead and share my screen again and introduce Justine Chow from SoCal Edison, who will be speaking next.
Thanks so much, Nikita, and good morning, everyone. I'm Justine Chow, and I'm a senior manager here at Southern California Edison, and I'm responsible for overseeing a team that manages our third-party led energy efficiency programs. So really great to be here with all of you to engage in this discussion, and thank you again for having me. Today, I'm going to be discussing how SCE is supporting our customers who are looking to deploy energy efficiency measures, as well as infrastructure projects that can support medium and heavy duty electric vehicles that are used in goods and people movement. So if you'll go to the next slide, please. And one more, that'll be great. Thank you. So at SCE, we do understand the important role that energy efficiency plays in helping our customers and in helping the state to achieve its goal of carbon neutrality by 2045. I'm sure as many of you are familiar, we have been designing and implementing programs that can help customers save energy, and we've been doing that for a number of years. But recently, in response to the Commission's directive that SCE outsource the design and implementation of at least 60% of our energy efficiency budget to third parties, we've begun to contract with a number of third parties that design and implement energy efficiency programs for residential customers, commercial, industrial, agricultural, and government customers in our service territory. These programs do aim to provide energy efficiency education, assessments, and incentives through deemed, custom calculated, normalized meter energy consumption, and strategic energy management pathways to those customers that qualify for their programs. Because these programs are not run by SCE, our customers will need to work directly with third parties to determine their eligibility, to learn more about each program's requirements and processes, and their available offerings, including incentives. So I believe you'll hear a bit more about some of that from some of my fellow panelists today. But to help facilitate those conversations, we have established a landing page for all of our third-party energy efficiency programs on our website. And so you all will get a copy of these slides at the end. There's a link to that webpage directly, which talks a bit more about the number of offerings that span all of those different customer segments. But happy to delve into specifics during Q&A. We do recognize that energy efficiency is part of the equation in helping the state achieve its goal of carbon neutrality, again, by 2045. The transportation electrification, and in particular, the medium and heavy duty segment, will also play a key role. And so I do know that there was some interest in touching on some of the work that we're doing in the transportation electrification space as well. So I want to spend some time on that today. If you'll go to the next slide, please, that would be great. And one more. So to help set the stage with some additional context, I've included a few graphics from Edison's Pathway 2045 white paper here. Now, as the largest contributor to greenhouse gas emissions in the state, the transportation industry, and in particular, medium and heavy duty vehicles that are utilized in goods movement, will have a vital role to play in helping the state achieve its goals. Pathway 2045 estimated that 2/3 of medium duty vehicles and 1/3 of heavy duty vehicles need to be electric by 2045 in order to achieve carbon neutrality. And so that means that there's quite a bit of work for all of us to do across the state and the broader ecosystem to enable this sectoral transformation and ensure a seamless charging experience for customers. And again, we recognize that SCE also plays a key role here in deploying and scaling up that charging infrastructure that will support refueling in Southern California, in addition to preparing the grid for that high electrification future. So we understand that customers are going to need coaching and advice as they navigate the transition. And so to help with that, we've launched a number of TE programs and services. So if you'll go to the next slide, please. We do have, at a high level, a TE advisory services program or offering that aims to help customers who are somewhat early in their electrification journey with EV readiness studies, access to webinars, and even grant writing assistance for those who qualify. But for those customers who are a bit further along and they're ready to proceed with vehicle procurement and charging infrastructure installation, we do have a dedicated program called Charge Ready Transport, which you can see more details about on this slide, which is one of our infrastructure programs that was designed specifically to address the key cost and complexity barriers that are associated with deploying charging infrastructure to support medium and heavy duty EVs. This program was approved by the PUC in 2018 with a total budget of $356 million. And it's really meant to serve as a catalyst to enable our customers across multiple segments, with greater adoption of medium and heavy duty EVs. So at a high level, the program provides low to no cost make-ready infrastructure for customers that are deploying at least 2 medium or heavy-duty EVs. And that can be trucks, buses, a variety of off-road fleet vehicles. So it's a pretty broad program. It also offers a charging equipment rebate for school and transit bus deployments, as well as to eligible non-Fortune 1000 companies that are installing charging equipment within a disadvantaged community in order to help offset the costs of purchasing that charging equipment. And so this program is really aiming to install infrastructure that will support the electrification of nearly 8,500 medium or heavy duty EVs. And at least 40% of that approved infrastructure budget is going to go to sites that are located in disadvantaged communities. So that's a bit more about this program. On the next slide, I'm happy to answer questions about the TE programs or how we're running energy efficiency programs here at SCE. But there is a slide with additional information about this particular program as well here. So Nikita, I think that's about it for me. Pass it to the next speaker.
Thank you so much, Justine. And I know we got a number of questions that were sent in early about electric vehicle charging. So thank you so much for that. And we'll get into some of those questions in the Q&A session. But again, feel free to drop them in the chat. I'm going to pass it off to Rhonda.
Awesome. So happy to be here today. My name is Rhonda Zaleka, and I am a customer relationship manager at Clear Result. And who we are ultimately, we are, seeking to change the way that people use energy overall through all of their energy efficiency, energy transition, and decarbonization solutions. So one of the programs that I'm going to be sharing a little bit about today is a little bit more about our strategic energy management and all of some of the other programs that we offer throughout the state of California. Let's go ahead and dive in. So to share a little bit about this program, we're ultimately seeking to provide, as much program as we can to support your energy efficiency needs within those public sector spaces, primarily throughout the state. So you can see that's in our local and federal governments, our school districts, tribal entities, and even those higher ed programs. And we seek to be a hub to be able to provide resources, whether that be technicalities, support, guidance, consultation, as well as being a funding source for some of those programmings. We try to offer a very comprehensive approach to be able to be specific to the needs that you might have for your organization. And within that, we have various pathways that we can do that. Obviously, you can see that we do that through some traditional pathways, but even more holistic as well with our SEM program. Can we go to our next slide, please? So within our strategic energy management program, or even some of our overall programs, you can see that it's a more holistic approach than what you might find in some of your deemed projects that you're probably familiar with if you're working in the energy efficiency space or energy space within an organization, and even some of those custom projects and metered projects that are just more traditional in what you see, where you can, receive incentives and rebates for some of the things that you might implement in your organization. But our strategic energy management program truly is holistic. We try and take, a full scope by creating a baseline of what you have been doing and being able to predict and project where you will be moving forward by also implementing low and no cost measures to be able to help you see those savings on the end. This program provides the ultimate support, you could say. We provide coaching and education for you. We don't want you to just stay in one place, but we want you to be able to overall educate yourself to be more energy efficient, as well as being able to have the extra support of coaching to guide you on what might be the next steps and solutions for your organization. Can we go to the next slide, please? So some ways we do that is with a focus on continuous improvement. We don't want to just say, oh, we were able to, help your organization, save, money or get a rebate on one project, but what can we do to move the organization as a whole with continuous improvement year over year, and not just improvement in, a technical space, but also those operational and behavioral things. If we can begin to change the organization's culture around sustainability and energy efficiency, we believe that we can help you ultimately achieve all of your sustainability goals. And so with our programming, the coaches that work with your organization will be able to really help focus that effort, provide solutions, and be able to also identify those opportunities for those not only low and no cost behavioral changes, but also be able to support how we can get everyone on your team on board while being able to provide you with the accurate data to support what you're ultimately seeking to do. If we can move to our next slide. So these are some of the benefits that we find within these programmings that we offer. It's obviously there's no cost to participate, and we focus on those low to no cost savings. So we're not looking for anyone who's wanting to make to just have to, throw a boatload of money into something. It's not like a large capital project that we're going to be requiring anything of you. But this is an opportunity for you to say, hey, this is where we are, and we do the work to help figure out where those savings are for you. We're not gonna challenge you to say, oh, well, we'll do this, but you have to, insert X amount of money. That kind of defeats the purpose. But we really look to see what are the opportunities that are currently existing that we can help provide those savings. Annually, we always hope to see at least try and target 5% savings for each organization that we work with. But obviously the potential to grow beyond that does definitely exist. There are potential savings, not only per kilowatt hour savings, depending on where you're located within the state, but also for just participating in some of our programs, there's opportunity to see more savings and funding coming back into your organization. And I think with the scope of where we are with budgets these days, who doesn't want more money coming back into their budgets? But one thing I want to highlight that I think truly is really unique about this program is that you have Clear Results engineers, coaching, and analysts as an extension of your team. You can see us as an extension of your staff. Just as Justine kind of said, we work also within the SEE territory as a third-party implementer program for them. And so we truly are able to be an extension for the organizations that we work with, to be able to help them, achieve their efficiency goals. And if they have not identified those, even be able to help them outline some of what those are and create a plan to move from one place to the other. So there really is a boundless amount of opportunity for the organization. Next slide. So this is an example of what we call an energy model that we create for every client that we work with. And I think it's important that you can see that we see savings year over year. So our strategic energy management program is not meant to just be a one-year program, but it's meant to extend and expand throughout the organization year over year. And throughout the time of our programming implementing, we not only identify opportunities that and help you determine what might be the best timing for that, but we're also able to calculate that using a baseline of your historic data and to be able to build upon that and also project what your future usages might be. So this is a really great resource that you have access to once you're able to go through the program, and we're able to build this out for you. There's so much more that I would love to share, but I think it's really a great opportunity for us to maybe work one-on-one, and we can get on a call and I can share the details and learn about what your energy goals are for your organizations as well. Next slide. So just as a brief overview, to help you better understand what is the approach that we're in the scope that we're looking at this through. It's through creating the structure within your organization, having your executive sponsor and an energy champion, someone who will work directly with our coaches, and then how we can disseminate that information through your team. As I mentioned, we try and track everything that we can do, starting with that baseline so that we can model what your energy efficiency should look like throughout the year, ultimately bringing more savings and funding back into your budgets. We do this also to be able to continue the education as well as help you fine tune the tools and the techniques that you use for your organizations. And I think the greatest thing about this program is it truly provides encouragement and accountability, as well as an opportunity to share the savings and support for all of your stakeholders. We are all responsible to the people in which we serve. And so being able to have the support, a platform, and backing to be able to share with your stakeholders the savings that you are going to receive and exactly what the energy goals and plans are, we're a great resource to help support that and add credibility to the work that you're already doing. Next slide. We do this through a very simple process. The opportunity is available. There is no cost to participate, and our agreements are non-binding. Obviously, we want to help and support every organization who wants our support. However, we also recognize that things happen, especially within the public sector space. And sometimes, we're able to say, oh, we started a project and we have to put it on hold. Should something of that nature happen, there's no penalty for if an organization has to put our program on pause or unenroll in the program, but ultimately the benefit is joining the program because it's free of cost. So that means for free, every organization is getting that coaching, that engineering, that education, those analysts, that support. And so it's really just an extending of your staff to help bring your energy goals to fruition. So we have a fairly standard and very simple enrollment agreement that we send out and that we would ask for our energy sponsor and to sign, and then we would move forward with monthly meetings. It says 2 to 3 hours, but a lot of time after those initial calls are the time that you would have to invest in the program. It shortens, and it's just time for those accountability check-ins. We all need accountability to kind of check in and make sure that we are where we're supposed to be. Our strategic energy management program is one that is widespread, but with Clear Result, we offer so many more programs. Next slide, please. And throughout those programs are able to really focus on those energy efficiency, energy transition, and decarbonization goals. And that covers the span of so many facets. And so if you're seeking an implementer to either, hey, we just need to talk about where do we need to go from here, or we know that we want to join a program, or we have projects that we want to do, what incentives are available to us, I would encourage you to reach out to me, whether the SEM program is for you or whether it's one of our many other programs. I would love to be able to sit down and get you connected with the right people so that you have the opportunity to not only save, but, you know, reduce your global footprint, to be able to be more efficient in all of your energy savings. So I definitely appreciate this opportunity. And I'd love to hear any questions and would love to be able to connect with your organizations to see where we can go. And hopefully we can continue to change the way that people are using energy.
Thank you so much, Rhonda. Before we pass it to Brendan, I did have a quick question. So you talked about a really great opportunity through the SEM program that can really help agencies. And you mentioned it's primarily in the SCE territory. So for those who are outside of the SoCal Edison territory, what similar opportunities are available for them?
So there definitely are SEM programs that do exist beyond the SCE territory. And I would honestly just say, I would love to see exactly what territory you're in, exactly what segment of business that you're in, so that we can determine the exact programs that would be best for you. We also have programs that will also assist in funding projects, various other things. So I would say definitely reach out to me so that I can, you know, be very specific, because all of our programs are very much so customized to where you are and who you are.
Great. So there are opportunities available outside of the SCE territory. Thank you so much.
Correct.
All right, and we'll have more questions for you, definitely have already come in, but we'll pass it to Brendan first to round us out and give us the local government perspective. So go ahead, Brendan.
All right, thank you. And it's very good to be with everybody today, especially my local government colleagues. I am Brendan Havener-Doughton. I serve as the energy manager for Contra Costa County Public Works. I've been with the county for about a year and a half. Before that, I worked at a local school district in the East Bay. And before that, I was at PG&E. Prior to that, I was in the private sector, all kind of focused in energy efficiency. Now my scope of work is a little bit more broad. So I'm definitely gonna talk a lot about the importance of energy efficiency, but I wanna also share the other aspects of our energy management program with the county, with you all. I did see that question from Justin in the chat as well. So we are participating with Clear Result in the SEM program offered by MCE, our local CCA in our region. So what we're doing in the county is leveraging the SEM program to design and implement our own kind of in-house SEM program, because what I'll share a little bit about is we have tons of plans that tell us what we should do and how, and maybe not how we should do it, but setting goals, and, you know, whether it's a climate action plan, an energy reduction plan, a distributed energy resource plan. We have a ton of plans, but what I'm focused on doing is bringing those all together under one program, which is a more active approach to making sure that those plans are actually implemented. Next slide, please. So it's just an overview of what we're going through, overview of our SEM approach, focusing on energy efficiency, taking a breath and asking ourselves, why are we doing this work in the first place? And then I'm going to go through the 4 other pillars of our SEM program: demand response, solar, battery storage, EV charging, and then wrap it up with a summary. Next slide. So this is just kind of a overview of the 5 pillars of our SEM strategy. So first and foremost, energy efficiency. That involves equipment upgrades, whether it's lighting, HVAC, refrigeration, in some cases, maybe transformer replacement for older transformers. These generate persistent savings that hopefully are persistent, but typically persist over time, and you eliminate, you know, the unnecessary energy use. The third column or the row here is really specific to our county portfolio. So we have a portfolio of about 400 buildings. I would say only 40 or 50 are substantial, and there's a whole collection of smaller facilities. But because we have that large portfolio, we're able to find a lot of opportunities. So when it comes to energy efficiency, we're talking about six-figure savings in many of our portfolios of project portfolio. With respect to demand response, this is really shedding load to provide relief to the grid when it's overburdened. So anyways, I mean, it could be as simple as turning off the lights, right, which is a low impact, or as is extensive as changing the scheduling of your HVAC equipment, or even turning it off completely towards the end of the day. These are one-time savings, and you revert back to your normal operating procedures once those demand response events are over. We recently participated in DR programs. Last summer, we had, I think it was 9 consecutive days of flex alerts from Cal ISO, the independent system operator for the grid. We saved roughly $3,000 on our energy bill, and but then got paid about $15,000 from the DR program we were participating in. So there are utility programs out there that will pay 5x retail cost for participation. I'll talk a little bit more about each of these, so I'll run through these quickly here. Solar, we do a lot of power purchase agreements, and with our portfolio, we have 8-figure savings over 20 or 25 year contract term. Battery storage, super expensive, but there are programs that help support paying for the equipment and the installation, and as well as third-party agreements that will manage the battery for you in terms of charging and discharging. What we've seen in some of our projects is 6-figure savings on a single battery. And then EV charging is actually my priority right now, and we've got funding to roll out over 150 ports across 25 sites in the county to support our vehicle electrification plan. So this is a little bit, some of the analysis we've done on total cost of ownership is still evolving, but generally speaking, for our light duty fleet, we are we're seeing a benefit over the term of that vehicle's life in terms of financial, being less expensive than internal combustion engine. Okay, next slide. So energy efficiency is an important starting point, and so why? It's an opportunity to eliminate unnecessary energy use. That's the easy win. Just locating and finding those opportunities is the challenge. Energy efficiency typically provides a really great return on investment in a short amount of time. That's specifically talking about kind of the low-hanging fruit. But in general, when we look at all the other ways we can invest in energy resources, energy efficiency is going to be one of the cheapest ways. It also frees up electrical capacity for future building electrification as those regulations come into place, and EV charging, for example. What you may have already found, and I've certainly found from building to building in our county, some of our buildings are tapped out. We don't have the capacity to put in extra EV charging, and now we're going to be reliant on asking the utility for a new service line. So bringing down the total electrical load through energy efficiency measures, it allows us to do fuel switching, put heat pumps in, raise up the demand for electricity, but eliminate gas and fossil fuel use in our buildings. And then, of course, these efforts can align with general maintenance and replacement activities. So it's not just purely doing energy efficiency for energy efficiency's sake. It's actually addressing some of the challenges that some of your maintenance colleagues may maybe dealing with aging equipment. So where to begin? And this kind of goes back to Daniel's presentation. Understanding where you use energy, you know, some of the larger buildings or operations, if you have large water pumps, for example, or just your large facilities, is a best clue to you know, for a starting point. And then how do you use that energy in terms of, you know, gas or electric? So once you have some of that data, you can start to look at your energy use intensity, that EUI that Daniel talked about. You know, taking your usage data and dividing it by the square footage, so then you can start looking at, you know, why am I using twice as much energy in you know, in this building that, you know, compared to that building when they have relatively the same amount of square footage. And then, you know, I think depending on your position in your organization, you know, always communicating with facility staff and getting the ground truthing some of your assumptions and building rapport and partnerships with the folks that are taking care of the equipment is hugely important when trying to identify opportunities for efficiency. Next slide, please. So I want to break here because, you know, we're really focused on energy efficiency in this webinar, but you know, it's really a starting point. And I think took notes here. So 37% of us said, you know, we are excited about doing energy efficiency for the environmental reasons, for carbon reduction. And so I wanted to just pause and you know, talk about how important it is to reflect on what is driving your interest or just projects in doing energy efficiency. Is it financial savings, carbon reduction, or maybe it's related to just providing a little bit of maintenance relief for your colleagues in the facilities department. So just to consider, you know, in the past, energy efficiency actions had a high correlation with carbon emission reductions, mostly because the grid was just dirtier, right? And as we get cleaner and cleaner power onto the grid each year, that essentially erodes the environmental benefit. And I know I'm simplifying here, but it's important because this was an epiphany for me years ago, and I want to make sure that we're all thinking about this, that when we do energy efficiency, depending on the time of day, it could have very little carbon benefit, you know, carbon emission reduction benefit. When the middle of the day is filled with solar, right? There's virtually no carbon emission reduction savings that you could claim for those efficiency measures. So while energy efficiency is incredibly important and it's financially sound and an important starting point, it's an enabler for other more impactful carbon reduction tactics. Next slide, please. I want to talk a little bit about demand response. So again, it's really shedding shedding or shifting load during peak times, 4 to 9 generally in California, when the grid is overburdened. And so the California Independent System Operator will issue a flex alert, and that's basically alerting people to reduce their consumption, whether in your house and you turn off your AC, or in a commercial office building when you're doing any number of measures to reduce. That's the game plan, just for a short period of time. Electricity brought onto the grid to meet peak demand during those times when everybody needs power comes from really dirty sources, more carbon intensive sources. So by doing this, you may only, like I referenced, we saved $3,000 you know, on a $8 million electrical bill a year. It doesn't move the needle, right? But what we're also providing is the avoided need to bring on dirtier power. And if everybody could do that, then, you know, that does have a significant carbon impact. Cost-effective demand response tactics typically require building management systems, so centralized control. So I benefit from, having a larger organization that has those systems in place for a lot of our medium and large buildings. And so I do want to just caveat this, participation in DR is a lot easier when you have a computer you can go to and manipulate schedules pretty easily from a central location. But any amount of effort would be worth it, and I would encourage folks to explore demand response programs. What we do is really draw down the air conditioning load by changing schedules. Sometimes we'll pre-cool a space a few degrees below the typical set point, and then cut it off and let it drift 4, 5, 6 p.m. as people leave the office. So I want to make a point that, it may be hard to participate in demand response for different reasons. Capacity may be one of those, but controls is a big one too. But I want to kind of, present DR as an opportunity for emergency response in relation to, the health of our electric grid, because if we don't do it, then we will get into an emergency situation where we have rolling blackouts or brownouts. Again, utility programs pay 5 times the retail value roughly. So it is lucrative if you have the ability to participate. Okay, next slide. Solar. 10, 12 years ago, solar was a lot more expensive. It's very cost effective now. And so, the power purchase agreements, for those of you not familiar with the contract structure, essentially, you hand over all the work to a solar developer and they sell you electricity. And that's all you're on the hook for, is buying the power that they're generating. So they own and operate and maintain the system. So it really limits your risk and your involvement. It comes down to providing them site access from time to time to clean the panels and do maintenance. So I want to underscore that power purchase agreements are your friend, and if you haven't looked into them yet, definitely encourage you to do so. The savings are instant because you don't have any out of pocket, so that's day one. If you're looking at different opportunities in your jurisdiction, large parking lots are great, especially if they're in conjunction, adjacent to a large building or any type of large load of electricity. And one of the benefits is that you can lock in your electrical rate. Not only is it flat over time, but it doesn't it doesn't escalate like a utility rate would, about 3 to 5% on average a year. So that's it's a super benefit. I think one of our PPAs right now is at like 13.5 cents. Our average blended rate is somewhere between 26 and 32 cents. So it's a lot cheaper power. So in the past, PPAs have included escalation rates over time. That's not typical these days, and just making sure that you make sure that's not in the contract. It's a flat rate over time. And then kind of tying back to energy efficiency, energy efficiency upgrades are a lot cheaper than solar. And so the more you do for energy efficiency, bring down your baseline, the less panels you will need to cover that load. Next slide, please. Battery storage. My personal opinion is, and I mean, it's factual, that's very expensive, but I am not, recommending that the county go out and spend tax dollars right now on large batteries, just because the value proposition is not it's not watertight for me. I think when other programs like the SGIP program come in to help subsidize those costs, then we're game. And we have done that. We've installed 3 500 kW batteries, installing one more. And you know, when we think about batteries, we talk about how it would be so great to have this dedicated backup power, you know, when the grid is down. But you know, from what I've seen, a lot of times this is not the scope for most battery projects, and you know, there's an additional scope that is involved in providing a dedicated circuit to an existing facility to make sure a certain circuit is provided with power during an outage, which is not to say that they don't exist. They certainly do. You know, especially for new construction, there's, you know, if you're starting from scratch, it's a lot easier to kind of build out that microgrid. So they can be operated to maximize cost savings or carbon reduction or balance of both, you know, by discharging when costs are high. So the building, the meter is benefiting from the stored solar power versus, you know, discharging when the grid is the dirtiest as well. And sometimes those tend to correlate and overlap, but you know, you can set those goals as you wish. The county, our 4th battery is because it's new construction and because we're focused on EV charging, we're building a battery project that is serving a bank of EV chargers so that we will have EV chargers up and running if the grid is down. Next slide. And just wrapping it up with our EV charging, which again is like my main focus and priority. Our analysis shows that the total cost of ownership, as I mentioned before, is lower for electric vehicles compared to internal combustion engines, specifically for our light duty fleet. And we're getting towards preparing to work on our medium and heavy duty as the market evolves. Our fleet electrification is driven by county policy. So all new and replacement vehicles have to be zero emission. And if you want a waiver, you have to go all the way up to the county administrator and get her signature. So that's a boon for my work, and there's no arguing, right? It's you know, this is what we're doing, and so that purchasing has started a little bit, but until we get infrastructure on the ground, it's not gonna ramp up, you know, until we have fueling stations. We also benefit from having established an internal fund for the level 2 chargers that we're looking at. You know, again, we're looking across many facilities. Leverage third-party funding wherever you can to subsidize cost. A lot of these incentives for charging infrastructure actually stack, so there you can also you know, you can stack them, right? So what we're looking at is the actual charging units are paid for by these programs, and we're footing the bill for the infrastructure. And then we are seeking federal grants for both level 2 and DC fast charging. There's a ton of money coming down, right, from the various bills, and we're doing our best to seek some of those funds. Next slide. So it's my last slide. Whoops, one more. I mean, back one. So in summary, you know, beginning to understand your energy usage in order to eliminate or reduce unnecessary energy use is kind of the first step. Benchmark, try to figure out your energy use intensity for your facilities. And I would say tackle the largest users with the highest EUIs first, and hopefully get a win under your belt. If you have a building management system or even smart thermostats, you know, taking a few hours or days to investigate the opportunity to participate in demand response programs would, I think, would be worth it. If you have a large parking lot, as I mentioned, this could be a good opportunity for solar and power purchase agreement. Remain open to battery storage if there are programs that will help you cover the cost, near full cost. And then consider how you position your agency to win federal and state grant funding for electric vehicle infrastructure. EVSE is electric vehicle supply equipment. So this may mean, collaborating regionally to see what other folks are doing in the region, and maybe seeking grants in partnership with others. So that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brendan. I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen and invite all of our presenters back. Brendan's just given us a great overview of how some of this information looks when a local government is actually implementing these projects, the relationship between energy efficiency and energy projects and renewables and so much more, how they work together. And we have a number of questions come in. I know a couple of our questions have already been answered at different points in the presentation. So thank you to our presenters. But I want to kick us off with something that Brendan just touched on, which is the funding piece. And this is something that we got several questions sent in through the registration about funding. Brendan, you talked a little bit about how local governments can fund some of these projects. But I wanted to open it up to the rest of you as well, especially Justine. What are some of the other maybe funding or financing resources that are available? How can local governments be competitive in funding for energy projects, and where should they be looking as they get started? Open for each of you if you have any response there.
Yeah, I think that this is a great question, and understanding that that's a big part of kind of the where to begin, and once you've got an idea in place, understanding how to fund your project is critical. And so as I mentioned, we, through our portfolio programs here at the utility, we work with third parties who are deploying a number of energy efficiency programs that do offer, in some cases, incentives or rebates to help offset the cost of installation of the technology. I know Rhonda touched on kind of aspects of how Clear Results SEM program works, and so I'm happy to have her chime in as well on that. On the TE side, we are running a number of infrastructure programs, and I know that Brendan alluded to some of those as well. And those programs are meant to help offset the cost of installation of EV charging infrastructure, as well as in some cases the charging equipment itself. And so there are, on the TE side, as Brendan mentioned, the ability to kind of stack programs and, participate in not only our infrastructure program, but other offerings that maybe even the CEC is running through their own grant programs. On the energy efficiency side, there are some ways to layer different incentives. There are some rules to ensure, that we're claiming savings appropriately, and that we don't end up kind of double claiming or double dipping there. But I would say that utility programs or our third-party programs on the EE side are a great opportunity or great way to engage in getting some support, not just on assessments or advice on how to deploy these measures, but also, incentive funding.
Thank you.
I was just going to say, I just posted in the chat for everyone. This is called the Energy Partnership Program, and there's no due date for application. It's just always open. It's up to $20,000, and it's for cities, counties, special districts. So it's right up your alley for applications, and it can cover benchmarking, audits. So I would definitely say if you've been wanting to do something like this, like benchmarking, auditing your buildings, this is up to $20,000. So I think it's worth checking out. So look at the link that I posted. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Daniel. Yeah, so check out the link posted in the chat. There was a follow-up question for you, Daniel. What was the effective date of the statewide 50K square foot benchmarking requirement?
Can you repeat that? What was the
Effective date of the 50K benchmarking requirement?
Oh, okay. I think they rolled out the commercial initially in like 2017, and then they followed with the 50K multifamily the following year. So it was originally just commercial, and now it's both, and it's June 1st every year.
Okay, and then there was a follow-up question there. So I think I'm understanding this is are there plans for energy use reductions statewide that are based on those benchmarking that benchmarking data?
It's complicated just because it's hard to establish what's good, a baseline for that. It's probably going to be more spearheaded by local ordinances, because I think they have more control over the granularity of like what they deem is actually a good performer. So nothing yet for that. But that would be it's called, what's it called? It's called performance standards. So I think that's the next goal, but not right now.
Got it. Thank you so much. A couple questions were sent in prior to the presentation. Brendan, you touched about this a little bit already, but maybe you could share. So you talked about with battery storage that maybe it's not the most cost-effective solution at the time being. We have a question that came in about with advancing technologies, what is the best way to know when to implement something versus when to wait if new technology is developing? Could you share a little bit more from that perspective?
Sure. I mean, I think I hope this answer is satisfactory, but it's kind of an easy answer, which is I think we need to do whatever we can, whenever we can, as fast as we can. We're in a situation where as much attention and resources have been put behind climate action, it's still way short of what we need, right? And so we're enjoying this decade, we're enjoying a lot more political support and funding for climate action, which potentially is in jeopardy, right? I mean, it's not a given that that's going to continue, but we need way more, and anything we can do to advance not only the impact, no matter how small, but also just the narrative of why we need to be doing this, and how do we do it, and all that, we should do it. So the easy answer is don't wait for any technology. We have incredible technology at our disposal. Oftentimes the issue is people. People get in the way of things. People solve the problems. People create the problems. So we as local government staff who are committed to this issue, as we influence others around us and change the way that we think about what's the priority and what's most important, that's what's most important is changing minds. And if it's a small little thing that you're doing, you're just setting the baseline or the foundation for the person that comes after you. So I'd say I've come across a lot of like what if issues in the work around electric vehicle supply equipment, and being nervous about, well, if I choose this, then am I going to paint myself into a corner? And I want to make sure we're future proof, and I want to make sure we're doing this the most cost effective way. At a certain point, we got to ditch the analysis paralysis and just get it done. And then we learn, right? Okay, this didn't work, that did work. Next round, we scale up. So I think one of my weaknesses is that I want to see results quickly, right? And I think we all need to just take a breath and say, let's do what we can today and make sure that our eyes are wide open, our ears are open, and we're learning from all the things that we do.
I could maybe add to that as well, just so a bit more on my background. I used to run our Charge Ready Transport program prior to coming over to energy efficiency. And so I think to your comments, Brendan, on changing equipment, there's a lot that's evolving in the technology space. And I think to your point, um, we've seen a lot of really incredible developments in a very short amount of time. Um, there is a lot that takes place in the planning process, particularly as you're thinking about EV charging equipment. And so, to your points, Brendan, I think knowing that what seems like potentially even a simple change, if there's a change in even the geometrics of a charging station, that can impact the way that we have to design infrastructure and the like to serve it. And so I think trying to balance that and doing a lot of the upfront work to figure out what operationally is going to meet the needs of your fleet of vehicles, whether it's light duty or medium and heavy duty, is really important. But then kind of understanding that making changes as you get further along in the process do come at a kind of a time cost, if you will, and introduce the potential for additional delays because it may change how we need to plan or design the supporting infrastructure. So I think that it's a great question and really thinking about it. Many fleets are taking a phased approach, and so they're not moving forward with the full build out of their installation. And so at the utility, we're also thinking about how do we design infrastructure in a way that accommodates for future expansion and allows you to phase in equipment to take advantage of the learnings over time, so that you aren't necessarily in a situation where you install everything and you immediately want to rip it all out.
Great, thank you both so much. So yeah, that analysis, there is analysis to be done and there is thinking to be done about the projects, but also that call to action of whether it's through that phased approach or just not getting stuck in the analysis. There has to be some movement on the projects and on the implementation side.
Nikita, let me just add that, we don't all have to be experts in the latest technology or technical experts. And so really just finding those experts in your community and partnering with them. And, the folks that live and breathe certain hydrogen technologies or solar technology or whatever it is, leverage those folks and let them be your subject matter expert.
Yeah, just really relying on the experts that there are and the resources that there are. So kind of on that note, Rhonda, my question for you and the questions that's come in about the Clear Result program, kind of two parts is, these are really incredible programs and really incredible resources that are being offered. What type of outreach is being done to make sure that all agencies are really hearing about them and being able to take advantage of them? And then as a follow-up, in the partnerships that you have with local government agencies, what are those some of those initial barriers to getting some of the projects moving forward that you come across frequently?
Okay. So I would say in regard to that first question, in regards to outreach, what are we doing? Well, some of it is that we're whether we reach out or we see you at a conference, we try and make our presence known. We try and connect in person as much as we can, whether that be, someone maybe stopped by the office or we sent an email or a phone call. But we try and be in places that our local government agencies will be, so that they can connect with us, get to know who we are as much as possible. We also like to work with the utilities as much as we're able to be able to be that extension of them, whether it be being listed on a third-party page or being promoted by someone who works directly with the utility, saying, hey, we have this program that might fit you, and it's implemented by Clear Result. Obviously, we also have our own website where people can come to and they can then find us. But in regards to outreach, those are some of the things that we're currently doing to try and connect with our customers, as well as participation in events like this, webinars, and being able to host educational opportunities for potential customers as well. And I'm sorry, can you read that second question one more time?
Yeah, just as the agencies that you're working with as organizations are getting started with some of this work, what have you encountered as some of the barriers that they've experienced to moving projects forward?
Sometimes, and I'm sure Justine could probably mention that and speak to this as well, as Sometimes it's the paperwork. It's the, the mundane things of like getting, oh, we have an idea for a project, and, our staff has said that they want to sign up on this, but now we have to go to the utility and we have to, potentially find contractors or an ESCO to be able to support this work. How do we get from point A to B? And that's where our team, as Clear Result, we're also able to be a huge support, because we're able to lift the load and kind of help you build affluence and credibility for those projects to move forward, to be able to assist you in even some of that, who's going to crunch the numbers to make sure everything looks right and we can get everything approved for those projects. I think that's something that we identify and hear mostly from a lot of our customers is, hey, we have this project, we have this idea. If we do it ourselves, it might take us a lot longer, but if we work with you, we know that we'll be able to gain the influence that we need to get this project rolling soon.
Yeah, the administrative side of it, and I think we've heard a lot today. There are resources available to help people overcome that through these programs. Great, thank you. We have a couple questions specific to EV chargers that come in. So I think a couple of these have already been mentioned, but I wanted to put these out there. When thinking about EV chargers, is there a framework for evaluating where to put them in, or planning and design? Any best practices that exist for EV chargers specifically?
Yeah, so this is a great question. And I'm sure, Brendan, you can share some of your real world insights as well. I think that there's a couple of different components that you want to think about when thinking about EV charging equipment. As we're thinking about the medium and heavy duty space, but this is also applicable to light duty, depending on kind of where you're thinking about placing chargers in the lot. Understanding the vehicle operations at the site and, what routes vehicles are going to be driving, what their duty cycles are going to be. Those sort of key parameters should really help drive decisions on equipment and equipment sizing, and making sure that you have chargers that are first and foremost going to meet the needs of the vehicles that you're operating, that are not necessarily underpowered, but also that are not overpowered. Right sizing of equipment is really important. And so that's key to kind of keeping equipment costs lower. It also helps with equipment footprint. The higher powered you go, the bigger the equipment has to be on the utility side to serve those chargers, and the larger the chargers themselves will be. And so that starts to speak to space constraints at your particular parking lot. And so I think that to the extent, you're making decisions about equipment, thinking about how vehicles are actually moving in and out of the property is really important. When it comes to the location of the chargers themselves, being able to site equipment as close as you can to utility distribution equipment is usually pretty helpful in terms of keeping, again, overall costs of those projects down. And from our perspective, we do look at making sure that we can site things that are close to existing, power poles or transformers on a property. But again, in terms of kind of where you place the chargers, it's really going to depend on how those vehicles are moving in and out of the site and what's going to meet your needs best. And so through our programs, we oftentimes will work very closely with customers to better understand their equipment operations, how that may influence where we suggest to place equipment on a particular property, and then kind of where, how that drives the overall project design. But Brendan, want to give you an opportunity as well to chime in if there's anything else from your experience that was helpful.
Yeah, I agree with you, Justine. And there's the design on paper, and this would be perfect if we had it this way. And then there's the reality. But I think very importantly, like the closest it can be to the utility transformer or your electrical room, the better. Obviously, reducing costs of conduit runs and infrastructure. In one of my projects, we had a tent set up for, during COVID, we had outdoor seating and meeting space for our employees. It took, maybe 6 parking spots up. that would have been an ideal spot for some chargers, right? So my initial design was, yeah, we're gonna move or take down this tent. And they were like, no, we're not. So, it's okay. So that cost me $50K now to move it over here, right? So as long as the decision makers in the room know that, we're making, these concessions, on design, it comes down to really trying to make the most cost-effective design that works for the operations of your facility. So again, I guess a word of caution: don't go in there thinking I've only got X amount of dollars and I can only do it this way. I think welcoming the users of the site into the conversation at the appropriate time is really important, so that all of this is a change management exercise. So we're about to change people's vehicles, right? And so we really rely on people to adopt them and use them the way that we expect them to. If we don't bring those folks into the conversation, then the chances of success are reduced. And so we've seen some of the examples of this in California, where local governments invest in infrastructure and vehicles. Employees are not on board, and the vehicles don't get used as much as they are intended. So just a shout out for stakeholder engagement. It's important.
Thank you both so much. As we are approaching the end, I wanted to ask one final question, and then maybe we could do some final thoughts. But we saw that there's a significant a portion of the audience today that their main driver for these projects is the carbon greenhouse gas reductions component. How can agencies work on quantifying those reductions when they're implementing these projects and knowing where they're going to have the greatest impact?
I will say that there is a fuel mix number from each utility that can be used to determine kind of the carbon intensity of the grid power that's used in that year, in any given year. I think those numbers come out a lot later. I don't know how long it takes, but that's one way to you need to understand kind of what the carbon intensity of the KWHs that you're consuming off the grid are, as one starting point.
Yeah, I was going to say kind of what I had in my presentation earlier was just that slide that was saying, if I guess decarbonization is actually electrification, just, there are other decarb activities. So I think it's important to make that distinction. But you have to kind of, if you think about it, you put in a heat pump, I mean, sure, it's electric and you could realize savings, but if the envelope's terrible, and something where you're oversizing, I think that you're really not getting that GHG decrease. You might think you are, you might be like, yeah, we put in a heat pump, but if you're truly not, realizing those savings without doing enough efficiency work on the building or structure itself before, I think that's important to think about, at least when you're trying to calculate, how much did I really reduce by this excellent project? So I think that's important.
Thank you both of you for those answers. And we're almost towards the end, so I just wanted to open up for one last round of any final thoughts from our speakers to close things out, whether it's advice that you have for agencies getting started, another offer of the resources that your organization provides. Maybe we can start with Rhonda and just go around the group.
Yeah, absolutely. I think today really was a really great opportunity to hear from each of us about the opportunities that are available and about maybe what some of the challenges that might present themselves, and then what those solutions might be. And I think ultimately what we can come out of this knowing is that being able to educate yourself to be able to move forward or connect yourself to the education resources is a benefit for you to be able to move forward towards all of your energy efficiency goals, whether that be, towards EV or whether that be towards electrification, decarbonization, whatever it might be. It's connecting yourself to the resources and not thinking that you have to have all of the knowledge yourself. As Brendan mentioned, there are experts out there. So if you can connect yourself, whether it be to Clear Results or any other implementer that might be able to assist you, we can help you move from point A of having an idea or a goal or even a project started to be able to bring that to fruition and ultimately see those goals achieved.
Thank you, Rhonda. Go ahead, Daniel. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, I think I was really happy to see that there were so many cities and local governments, especially. I mean, that makes sense for what the title of this webinar is for. Yeah, it made me happy to see that. Like I said, we do have a lot of local ordinances already, and we're always looking for more. And so please be in contact with me and I can give you a lot more information. I think it's great on the level of the actual agencies, the different local governments, they could do it for themselves, but also I think it's really good for their communities to make those changes with their building owners in their communities as well. So yeah, just reach out to me, and it was a pleasure speaking here today.
Thank you, Daniel. Justine?
Yeah, I echo the comments from my fellow panelists. I think that this has been a great session. I know that I learned quite a bit as well from hearing from everybody. So I appreciate, just everyone's participation and engaging in the dialogue. I think, as you can see, we've got very aggressive goals in the state, and it's going to take the active involvement from all of us to really make those a reality. And so, I think that there have been a lot of really good comments about programs and, best practices and lessons learned that we've touched on today. But I also realize that, getting started sometimes can be just the daunting part of, moving forward with electrification. And so I want to emphasize the importance of reaching out early, even if you're just starting to think about your plans, or you need some assistance in how to get started, where to get started. So I think my colleague Haig put his contact information as well as mine in the chat. Our slides as well on the SCE side have additional links to other resources and contact information. We are really happy to engage in that conversation and look forward to collaborating with all of the stakeholders. So thank you again for having me.
Thank you, Justine. And Brendan?
Yeah, I just want to, speak directly to all my local government colleagues to thank you for the work that you guys do and the work that you probably do that's outside of your job description. Capacity is one of our main challenges in local government work, but I come to work every day because I believe that local government has an incredible power to set the pace of what we need to achieve in terms of climate action. We just need that courage and that perseverance. And so, what I lean on is and what I love to do is collaborate with others and really lean on folks that have more experience in certain areas. And, where there's opportunities to connect the dots and to collaborate, local government can be very powerful. We can build on each other's successes and borrow from each other as we have limited capacity, but together, we can get amazing things done. And that's what's going to take with climate change, right? So I think, my contact information is on the presentation, but also drop in the chat. And I encourage, anybody to reach out and also reach out to your colleagues in your region to talk about all the work that's going on.
Thank you so much. What a great way to wrap us up. Yeah, the work that local government can do has incredible effects, and there's a lot of incredible work to be done. And I want to thank our speakers so much for the resources that they provided, as they all mentioned in their wrap-ups. Take advantage of the experts and the resources that are available, and that'll really help kickstart things and move things in a different direction. I'm going to share my screen one last time so that I can share about the Beacon program. in talking about local governments and the work that they do, and how local government agencies can learn from each other, I wanted to just mention the Beacon program, which is a peer learning network with over 170 agencies. And it's really simple to join. It's a simple online application as well as a resolution from your governing body. And this is to recognize, to support, and to celebrate local government agencies for the work that they're voluntarily doing, going above and beyond past the state regulations to really make and build more sustainable communities. So I encourage you to check out the Beacon program if you're not already a member. And then encourage you to also check out ILG's other programs. Sustainable communities is just one of our pillars, but we work everything that government does, we aim to support. Local government does. So we have a lot of really great programs and resources. I encourage you to check them out and stay in touch with us. And then wanted to just say thank you once again to our wonderful, wonderful speakers for all of the information that you've shared today. This presentation has been recorded, and the recording as well as the slides will be sent out afterwards. Please feel free to reach out to any of us by email here. And just wanted to say thank you so much, everybody, for joining us. Thank you for sticking around. And I hope you have a great rest of your day, and hope we get to connect again soon. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Nikita.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you all.